This lesson is about IELTS Speaking Part 3 and comparing the past and the present. So we can look at some useful language for doing this. So often you're asked to compare a situation now with the same situation in the past. So common time periods might include 20 to 30 years ago, when your parents were young or when your grandparents were young. So we'll look at some examples of the kind of questions you can get. So for example, how are the eating habits now in your country different from eating habits in the past? Are the types of leisure activities that are popular today the same as those that were popular when your parents were young? How have shopping habits changed over recent years? Have the types of transport people use changed much over the last few decades? So one way to do this is to compare the past with the present is to use used to. So you can use it to say how things have changed. So we use it to refer to facts or situations that were true in the past but are not true now. When the change occurred is not important. So for example, Vietnam used to be a colony of France. So that means it's independent, so it's not anymore. Jimmy Carter used to be the President of the United States, but now he isn't, of course. So these are things that are not true anymore. We can also use comparatives to compare the past with the present. In these types of questions, the function being tested is compare. So this is obviously a good way of answering the question and talking about change. So as an example, 30 years ago, streets were much quieter than now. I think that reading was much more popular in the past. And you should note, obviously, that here you're talking about the past. So we're using the past simple. When talking about how things are different now, the present perfect is often used as well as the present simple. So for example, the streets have become much noisier these days. So notice when you're using the present perfect, we don't need a specific time. Reading is much less popular than it was in the past. We can also use speculation. So particularly for some of the longer periods or a long time ago, you might not be sure of exactly how things have changed. So it's okay to speculate. Would can be used for strong speculation. So that's if you're quite sure of what the situation was like in the past. So for example, I think it would have been harder for my grandfather to find out about international news because there was no radio or TV in his village. In the past, people would have travelled less often. So in these cases, you're fairly certain these are true. When you're not so sure, you can use other words. For example, perhaps, possibly, might, may. So I'm not sure, but perhaps they might have studied less science 30 years ago. Possibly, in my father's day, people could have played more sport. So in these cases, you're less certain. So these are examples of language you can use.